There it is. So the purpose of this meeting is to talk about Volunteer HQ, which we thought was pertinent given new SNAP requirements for some individuals that they have to volunteer a certain amount of hours a month in order to continue receiving SNAP benefits. Volunteer HQ is a platform that United Way of Broome County operates that makes it very easy to list all the volunteer opportunities in the county and connect volunteers who are looking to get volunteer hours with the agencies that are looking for volunteers. Um, Big thank you to Erin Zitman on our team, who I went into her office about this time last week and said, "Hey, we're putting together training for everyone that we know, and you have a week to put everything together." So thank you, Erin, for working on this. If you have any questions during this meeting, please feel free to unmute and ask. You can also pop it in chat, where we'll be keeping an eye out. But without further ado, Erin will talk to you about Volunteer HQ.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. And thank you guys for being here. I'm just gonna pop a link in the chat. So I put together basically a handbook for agencies, which would be you guys, the nonprofits are agencies. And that will kind of be how we're doing the training. So I put it in the chat in case you want to follow along, but you can also I'll share my screen and we'll go through it together. But I want to start off with just a question on who has or like has an agency page on Volunteer HQ or who does not. Anyone knows?
No.
No. Okay. So then Volunteer HQ is pretty new. Uh, that is understandable. And then I just wanted also to say, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to interrupt. Cynthia, is that like, yes, you have an account or you have a question? Account. Cool. Very nice. That is good. So we'll dive into that. We'll dive into it thoroughly. But just so everyone knows, if you have a question, please feel free to just unmute yourself and interrupt me so that I can answer a question like with whatever specific topic we're on. And you can also place comments in the chat and then Tim can also stop me. So, okay. So I'm just gonna share my screen. And that way we'll just go through the guide together and then I'll also be able to show you Volunteer HQ. So this is the guide. There's a couple different sections. They're all linked, so you can go to each bookmark and then you can click back to the top if you need to. Wanted to start off with some helpful information. So the current volunteer engagement specialist is me. So I will be your contact for anything volunteer related. If you need volunteers, if you have volunteers and you're looking for a project, that sort of thing. But generally, like if you guys need volunteers, I will be your person. If you need help with Volunteer HQ, you can email me, call me. That's my contact information. So there's that. Another helpful page. So Volunteer HQ is a database that we use. It is managed by a company called Galaxy Digital. They kind of create the skeleton for it. They help us when we're having issues. And so I included the link to their FAQ page. They have a bunch of articles to help move things along, help you figure out if you have an issue. So this is a good place to start if you run into problems, is to search here for articles for site managers. So site manager, we'll talk about that more, but that's anyone who is controlling an organization's page. And then lastly, we have a printable sign-in sheet that is linked here. It's just a PDF. It's fillable. So thank you to my coworker Carmela for making it fillable. So if you have volunteers and you should be having them sign in so you're tracking their names and when they're volunteering. You can either do it on the computer and fill it in on the computer, or you can print it out. So we have that resource here. So I'll jump into objectives. So why are we here? Tim kind of gave an overview, but some of the main points we want to hit here is that we want to be able to create a good volunteering experience. This is important. Just, I'm sure you all know, like engaging community, engaging volunteers, and building your own capacity as an organization. That is important. Volunteering is an important piece of that. Volunteer HQ is helpful for, posting your volunteer needs. It's a helpful tool, even though it does have a little bit of a learning curve. And then it is helpful in tracking volunteer hours. And that's become more important now because federal policy changes will require some SNAP recipients to, if they're not working, if they're not doing school or professional development, they will have to be volunteering. So organizations and volunteers will need to be diligent in tracking volunteer hours and verifying that they actually did whatever they said they were doing. This is unfortunate. It's a hassle on everyone's part, but it is what it is. So here we are, and we're going to try to make sure people know how to use Volunteer HQ so that they can track hours. So let's see. Verification, we're still not entirely sure exactly what volunteers will need to submit in order to say, yes, I volunteered here. So if a volunteer needs hours for government benefits, make sure they contact DSS before they're volunteering to make sure they have the correct forms and know what documentation they need from you as an organization. Same sort of deal if like an employee is volunteering and maybe they get like PTO from their employer to volunteer, they should check with their company first. So let's see. Responsibilities as an agency or an organization. So I say responsibilities, also just like good things to do. Identify the specific needs that your organization has. So like, where are you missing capacity? Where are you falling short that like maybe you don't have the means to, contract out for, hire for, or you don't need to do that specifically. It would be better to have a volunteer. So identifying your needs is important, having a conversation with your staff and your board. And then if you identify you have a volunteer need, make sure you're crafting a positive experience. We've definitely heard from volunteers that like if it's not a good experience, you could lose them and you don't want to lose them. So remember that they are unpaid and they're there to help. And it's good to be as friendly, gracious, and flexible with them as you can. Of course, some volunteer opportunities have more rigid guidelines and like you need them at a certain time. But whatever flexibility you can afford for your volunteers, just try to do that. And then plan ahead what they will be doing with your agency and be prepared to host them. Make sure you have the right tools. Make sure the area that you're bringing them into is safe and clean. Making sure that they have a safe experience and a positive experience and they know exactly what they're getting into so that they can, consensually volunteer with you are all important things to do. Then we have, as I said, we have a sign-in sheet that you guys can use. So make sure you have the sign-in sheet and be sure to get their name and email. It is essential to have name and email for making a volunteer HQ user and tracking hours, and we'll get more into that. So again, I linked our PDF sign-in sheet. And then lastly, like ask your volunteers what their interests are. And the more you utilize people's skills, the more they feel valuable, the more they feel engaged in the work that they're doing. And that's how you get repeat volunteers who want to come back. So not just like, assigning random tasks to people, but like if you have a couple different volunteer needs, ask the volunteers what they might prefer, that sort of thing. So other agency responsibilities, post to Volunteer HQ once you're comfortable with it. If you identify a need, just please put it on Volunteer HQ. That way, we know it's there. We know what you guys need. The volunteers in the community know what you guys need. That is very helpful when people call me and they're like, what can I do? And I go to Volunteer HQ and I see who's in Volunteer HQ, what needs are there. So that's very helpful for me and you and volunteers. Um, Keeping your contact information updated is very helpful because if a volunteer is trying to get in touch with you through Volunteer HQ and your contact information not updated, then it can really stall the process. It can discourage volunteers from volunteering. And then any updates from Volunteer HQ will usually come from this email. Again, Galaxy Digital is the hosting platform that hosts Volunteer HQ, so just make sure that email is not blocked. And then tracking volunteer hours. So those are some of the things that, to the best of your ability, you guys as organizations um, should be doing. Of course, capacity, we understand. So that's why I'm here to help um, try and have these things happen. Okay. Before we go to Volunteer HQ, I just want to cover some vocabulary because it's not always exactly straightforward. So Volunteer HQ is the colloquial name for our volunteer opportunity database. The link is uwbroomevolunteers.org, so it's not exactly a one-to-one name thing, but we call it Volunteer HQ. Galaxy Digital, as I said, is the parent company for Volunteer HQ. So emails from Volunteer HQ will come from a Galaxy Digital. They will have a Galaxy Digital slug tag, whatever. Forget the name for that. Agency. So in Volunteer HQ, the agencies are the same thing as an organization. So you guys would be the agencies. And subsequently, agency managers are users on Volunteer HQ who have the powers to manage an agency's page. So if you guys are familiar with Facebook or LinkedIn, it's similar. There's no like directly logging into your agency's page. It's just you log into your own user account, which you can use to volunteer or to manage your page. And basically, you as the user who works at your agency will have the powers and permissions to manage the agency's page, but there's no like direct login for your agency's page, if that makes sense. Hopefully, when we see it play out, it will click better. Then we have need. So a need is a volunteer opportunity. Basically, your agency needs something done. You need a volunteer. It's called a need in Volunteer HQ. A user, again, is just anyone who has an account on Volunteer HQ, whether that's the volunteer or an agency manager. Both of them have the same type of account. An agency manager just has the permissions to manage their agency. Responses, so that's the same thing. And let me make this bigger also. Responses is the same thing as like signing up. So volunteers, when you post a need, your volunteer opportunity, a volunteer will respond to that need. Initiatives, that's just a group of needs. So if we have Day of Action is an initiative where a bunch of different agencies are posting needs and they all happen on the same day. So it's under one initiative called Day of Action. Inactive. So if a need basically is deleted, if you delete a need, it's just, they call it inactive, which is different from expired, which is, you had a volunteer opportunity that happened yesterday. Today it would be expired. So it's not like deleted, but it's no longer visible. So those are some of the key terms. Does anyone have any questions up to this point? No? Okay, cool. So getting started on Volunteer HQ. So, let's see. So if we go over to uwbroomevolunteers.org, This is what the Volunteer HQ landing page looks like for everybody. So to begin, what you would do as someone who's, trying to register your organization, if you already have an account, you would log in up here. If you don't, you would just register your organization. So some things, and this is not like entirely, it's not the most clear. It's just like the little line underneath volunteer now. These are some of the things that make volunteer HQ a little difficult to navigate. But in the guide, it shows you exactly where everything is. Okay, so you're signing up your agency. There's a couple different, again, like vocab form things that can be a little confusing. Agency name, this would be like American Red Cross, United Way of Broome County, that sort of thing. So we already have one, but I'll just say United Way. That's our agency name. This is filled itself in, but the agency manager email, so that would be your email as the person who wants to manage that agency page. This is your personal or work email, and that will be associated with your user account. So something to note is when you're creating an agency page, it's not just creating the page, it's also making an account for you. That way you can sign in and manage the page. So the agency manager email is what you would use to log in. So that's my email. That's what my agency manager page is associated with. Put in the address, which is where your organization is based out of, zip code, EIN if you have one. Contact person. So this will be just someone listed on your agency's page. It would likely be you again. So I would put my name in again. I put my title in. Additional notification recipients. So this is anyone else that you'd like to receive email updates. Like someone responds to your need, which is, a volunteer, a user comes on and says, I want to volunteer for your opportunity that you posted. They're responding to a need. You as the agency manager will get an email, but you can also add other people's emails if you'd like them to get it. Like if you want your executive director to get a notification as well, then they can do that if you want another staff member. So that's that. Agency email, this would be listed as like a general contact. So for us, it would be like info@uwgroup.org. That would just be like listed so a volunteer can see like, okay, I want to reach out to the organization, which email should I use? Put your phone number, is the agency's phone number. So this would be like our general like 240-2000. Um, can add all these details. You don't have to, but helpful to have more. Current site password. So normally, maybe because I have my emails already associated. So if I put in like a random email that is not yet in the site, it should say yes. Okay. Then it's like, okay, we need to create an account for you, putting in your first name, last name, password. So this will be the part that creates an account for you. So you become a user that also has the agency page powers. So, and then you would request an account. I won't do that because we already have one and I made a test account already. But that's how you would sign up your agency. And let's see what's next here. Uh, So once you sign up your agency, it won't immediately appear on Volunteer HQ. It comes to us and we look it over. If you have anything that you need to edit or fill in, we'll let you know. And we will also send you, scroll down. We will also send you a user agreement. Anyone who has an agency page on Volunteer HQ has to sign a form that basically just said you won't, try and sell drugs on Volunteer HQ or use it for inappropriate reasons. So I'll email you, you sign the form, send it back to me, then I approve your agency. And then you're a full-fledged agency on Volunteer HQ. So, blah, blah, blah. So navigating the site as an agency manager. So what I'm going to do, I've made my account, I've made my user account and my agency page. I'm going to log in. So I made a test account here. Okay. And then it will take me several tries to log in as per usual. Okay. Here I am. I'm in my agency page. I've made my agency. It's super cool. It'll bring you here first, which is a little confusing because there's a lot of banners, and we'll see if we can edit that. This is something that Galaxy Digital does. But what you want to do is scroll down. And this is where all the magic happens. These are all the different tabs you have to manage your agency. So it automatically pulls you into the edit tab first. It will have everything you put in. What you want to do is, put in who we are and what we do. These are very helpful so that a volunteer is coming and looking at your agency. A lot of times this is the volunteer's first point of contact if they've never, interacted with your agency before and they're like interested in volunteering, they're probably going to look at your page and see who you are and what you do. So this is a really important, helpful thing to fill out. So I very much recommend filling it out. You'll see that I'm listed as an agency manager. You can have more than one agency manager, which basically means, and it has to be someone with a user account. So like our coworker, Carmela, has an account. I can add her as an agency manager. Once someone has a user account, you can add them in, and basically when they log into their own account, they will then be able to access your agency and edit and post needs and all that stuff. Um, so yes, you're going to scroll down, you're going to look through all the things, you're going to update things to make sure people know as much about your agency as possible. And you can add in a logo so that it's customized. You can add photos if you want. There's a lot you can add in. If you get lost on Volunteer HQ, let's say you're as a user and you're logged in as a user, which means you can also look at other people's needs. You can see what is going on. You yourself can volunteer. Like if I wanted to go and, become a community educator, even though I'm also managing my own agency page, I can go and do that. If you get lost on Volunteer HQ and you're like, how do I get back to my agency page? You just go right up here, click on my agency, and once it loads, it will bring you right back to where we started. So this is a helpful button to be aware of. This is also a helpful button to view your profile and do all these things. Those are the two main ones that you should be aware of up here. Let's see. Okay. Blah, blah. The next thing that will be important to note is how to post a need. So you'll see again here you have all of your tabs. In the edit section is where you your agency's profile, basically, what the volunteer sees. You can preview what the volunteer will see when they look at your agency page. But then if you go over here to needs, this is where you will be able to post your volunteer opportunities. So again, we're going to my agency, we're scrolling down to this ribbon, and we're clicking on needs. And then you'll scroll down again, and you'll see we're in the manage needs section. So there's a lot going on here. We're gonna start with just, okay, you want to add a new volunteer opportunity. You're gonna come over here, click the add new need button. So the different parts of this, where you're gonna put in a title, you're gonna put in a description. You can add images. It makes you select an interest so that, if a volunteer is searching for a certain type of volunteer service, that they can narrow it down. We'll say, you can add multiple. So you'll do that. Qualifications, you don't really usually have to worry about. A lot of these sections are not necessarily pertinent. What you will want to do is designate a site supervisor or a contact person. You don't have to do it, as long as you are, checking your email and making sure that you know who's, where the notifications are coming from. But it's also helpful to designate a person who will be like, this is the person who is going to run the volunteer event, interface with the volunteers. If you put your name and email and phone number, a volunteer can contact you with questions more directly instead of just, we'll talk about it, but this is the way that they can directly see your contact information. Otherwise, I'm going in here as a volunteer, I'm clicking on a need, and like not necessarily any contact information. It just tells me, okay, you want to respond to the need, you want to volunteer, cool. It doesn't tell me if I have questions who I should reach out to. So I think it's very good to designate a site supervisor or contact person. That way they will list it on your need. Duration. There's a lot of different options here, which might be a little confusing. Is ongoing. This is in the handbook. We go through the different durations and what they mean. Ongoing is exactly what it sounds like. It is something that's just a long-term thing, like, occasional help needed for clothing closet, sorting, something like that, where it's like something you consistently need. There's no set time. It just like respond to the need, contact us, in order to work it out. So then you would put in like, normally I would need people for 2 hours for that sort of thing. And normally it would be sometime between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's what, yeah. So this is like, gives a little bit of a description, but like this, if you have an ongoing need, you'd probably just, if someone responded to your need, you'd probably talk on the side with them. Be like, okay, when do you want to come in? What works for you? Runs until, similar thing, you have something ongoing, but it stops at a certain point. This also gives you the option to say, I only have the capacity for 30 people. But again, you would put in like this thing takes 2 hours. It would be somewhere between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., that sort of thing. Happens on, you have maybe you have a fundraiser coming up and it's on a specific day. You would put in the day, you'd put in the registration close date, which basically means, volunteers are not signing up last minute. You can put it for a couple days before. That way you know who your volunteers are. Capacity, again, you're putting in, I need 30, I need 60, I need 2 hours description, same thing. Multi-date, This would be, if something's happening, a single volunteer opportunity that happens over multiple days at the same time. So like financial literacy week is whatever week, and we need volunteers from 3 to 5 p.m. every day. So start date, you'd put like a Monday and then a Friday, and then whatever date. If you want to close registration, you don't have to, but if you wanted to, you could put in your capacity, how many volunteers you need over the course of that volunteer opportunity that whole week. And then you could put in it's like maybe it's 4 hours each day, and each day, and this one you can get a little more customized. Like it doesn't have to be a specific number. You could say each day of like 4 to 8 p.m. That sort of thing. Then custom shifts. This one is this one can be helpful if you kind of have like random time slots, or like maybe you have 2 time slots in one day. So you can say, okay, I have one shift that happens today at, and you need to adjust the sliders down here, at 11 a.m. It runs for 2 hours, and I want 10 people on this shift. And then you click add shift, and then it's listed as a shift there. And you're like, okay, I have another shift. This one is at 2 p.m. This one is also 2 hours, but I actually need 5 people for this one. So you add a shift, um, and you can specify all those things. And then you can even like, I have another shift at this random time, and you can, you know, add in as many shifts as you want, and then volunteers will see just like a list of different potential shifts that they can volunteer for. So that's custom shifts. And then recurring shift is like, you know, for example, Noma does a weekly dinner on Saturdays. Say it's weekly, repeat every 1 week. On Saturday, you would specify it's happening, let's say you're just doing this month. So it's we're happening this month, starts at 10 a.m. It runs for 4 hours. We need 10 people, that sort of thing. So those are all the different like specifications you can make for how long or when your shift or when your volunteer opportunity happens. I know there was a lot. Any questions at this point? Nope. Okay. Cool. Um, let's see. So other things you can specify, whether or not it's a virtual need or if it's in person. If it's virtual, then it won't give you an address to put in. If it's not, then it'll tell you to put in an address. Allow team registration. So this is basically can one person sign up for an entire team? Like can multiple people volunteer from the same place? So if you say no, that would probably be for like if you're looking for a board member and you only want one person, then you would say no. Um, if you say yes, that kind of opens you up if like, someone from Security Mutual wants to bring a team of people in with you, in with your organization, they can register a bunch of people at once. And that's easier for them. And then if you didn't want any individuals, but you only want teams, you could say teams only. Um, Promotions and sharing, you don't really have to worry about. Initiatives, though, you can put your need under, you don't have to, but it can be helpful. If it's something long-term, you can put it under long-term needs. And it'll show up in this tab over here. Short-term needs, same thing, it'll show up over here. If you're doing a day of service, day of caring, usually we'd have a day of caring banner over here. Then you would have to put the initiative in and say, like, I want my need to be associated with day of caring. And then there's another drop down, which is not very clear, but you should take a look at it also, drop it down. You can put age restrictions. You can say if it's family friendly, if it's outdoors, if your space is wheelchair accessible. Those are good things to add. You don't really have to worry about attributes or clusters. You can add additional notification recipients. So like if anytime someone responds to a need, if you put someone's email here, they will get a notification that a volunteer is interested. And those are the basic things for creating a need. And then once you click, create your need, it will again come to us at United Way, and we will just give it a quick look over, make sure it's all good. If there's anything we think you need to add in details wise, then we'll like shoot you an email, let you know. And then once we approve it, it will actually show up on Volunteer HQ. So it doesn't automatically show up on Volunteer HQ. It gets reviewed first, and then it goes up. So, any questions on creating a need? Okay, cool. So what users see, we kind of went through this already. So like, let's see, my test agency has, I'm gonna go to needs here. I have a need. I currently made it private. So let me go into that and show you what that means. So I have the description, all the shifts. And then should be privacy. Oh, yes. Okay. Promotions and sharing. Let's say there's not really a reason you should need to private a need. Usually that's more like, okay, we have people, um, we're full and maybe something changed about it. We want to take it off, but we don't want to delete it because maybe people have already responded to it. Public means it will show up on Volunteer HQ. Private just means it won't. So I'm going to update this to public so that we can see it. And now if we go to needs, you'll see my need is there. And if a volunteer will see the exact same thing as this. Even though I'm an agency manager, my user account is the same as a volunteer account. So we will both see this layout. So if someone wanted to volunteer, they would go into here, and right now it's full because I made the need have a capacity of 1. So what I'm gonna do is edit that. No, we'll just add, I did shifts. So let's say we have a shift for the 14th, 4 hours and 2 people. Anytime you make a change, you always have to scroll all the way down to the bottom and click update need, otherwise it will not save itself. So just be mindful of that as well. Then if I'm a volunteer, I'm going in, I'll see this here. I'd be able to view details, and then I'd be able to respond to the need. I have it as individuals only, so only an individual can respond. And then you'll see the different shifts are listed here. Yes, let's see. When volunteers respond to your need, so like they would click in, view details, they click respond, and then they would get a confirmation email that lists, anything that you've put in, the test agency, the title, and the date that it happens. And then an invitation to add it to their calendar. So that is a good thing. So that's what the users will see. And then on your end, when you're preparing for a volunteer opportunity, if someone responds to your need, volunteer responds, you will receive an email from No Reply Galaxy Digital, which is again why you should make sure it's not blocked. And you'll get the subject line, a new response to your need. So what it'll show you when you go in is Here's the opportunity. If you have multiple needs posted, this is helpful because it'll tell you which one you have a volunteer for. It'll tell you the name, it'll tell you the email, and any contact information or additional notes that they might have put in. So you'll receive an email that you got a volunteer, and you'll also receive an email before your volunteer event happens as a reminder. So you'll get a notice of upcoming need. And it will prompt you and say, make sure that you contact your volunteers. You may wish to log in and pull any volunteer information, and then it'll give you the link to log in. We will also go over how to look at your volunteers. So things to do before your volunteer opportunity or your need. Make sure you're prepared for your volunteers. Gather or purchase any equipment that you might need. Prepare the space they're working in. Make sure it's safe. Make sure there's nothing going wrong. Make sure there's no like infestation of anything, or anything breaking or leaking. Make sure it's a safe environment. And make sure there's a staff member there to guide the volunteers so they're not, off into the abyss. Because another thing that can make volunteers not want to come back is feeling like they have nothing to do or they don't know what they're supposed to do. So make sure you have someone there to guide them. And make sure you contact volunteers beforehand. You want to be able to make that connection so that they know everything they're getting into. You know any special information about them. You're able to communicate, here's how parking works. Our driveway's kind of hidden. Here's what you have to do. All that you would do through contacting your volunteers beforehand. So how do you do that? So in order to contact your volunteers, you would go back to the needs section. And what I'm going to do is, let me see. Let me go back to my agency. Again, I'm clicking that top button just to bring me right back to where we started. Going over to needs. And you'll scroll down and you'll see your list of needs. Some things to note about needs is there's a couple actions here that you can take. Export responses will be helpful. Export responses basically just gives you a list of everyone who has said they want to volunteer. Any volunteers you have who responded to your need will be on that Excel sheet. Export needs gives you a list of all the needs that you have. So if I did that right now, it would only export this one need. Show inactive would show me anything that I've deleted. So I think I don't have anything inactive. Show expired shows me any needs that are expired. So these ones I made beforehand, and the date, you'll see November 4th, November 5th already happened. They are expired, so they automatically hide themselves. So if you want to see them, you have to click show expired. I will hide the expired again. So what you want to do is you'll see you can click responses here. That will show you who's responded to your need. Right now, I have responded to 2 different shifts in this need. And then again, what you can do is export responses from here. So what you'll need to do is click this little checkbox that is not very distinct, but it is here. If you want just like a couple of your volunteers' emails, you just click a couple of them. If you want all of them, you click that top button. And then you want to export responses. So that will give you a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet will eventually open. And it'll give you a list of names, emails, everything about your volunteer response. So once that loads, okay. So this is the exports that you'll get. They've got a bunch of different things here. Every response will just have an ID number, the date that the person responded, what they're responding to. The shift has an ID number, which you don't really have to worry about either. Gives you the dates and times. And then over here, you have the email. So if you need to reach out to people, you just come over here, you copy their emails, and you can do it that way. I think that's the best way to do it personally, because then you have like a direct, like one-on-one contact with the volunteer, as long as you're still using Volunteer HQ and not just, going off into creating that relationship without using Volunteer HQ. It's good to have that relationship, but you still want to make sure you're using Volunteer HQ to track hours and such and posting your needs. But yeah, so that's how you would directly respond to people. Alternatively, Volunteer HQ does have a feature that you can message people, but it's kind of more like, you send a message out and I'm not really sure if there's a way to see what you sent or like see I don't know how the responses come back. So I feel like exporting responses is the best way to go and copying the emails from there. You can also like copy emails from here. But if you did want to send a message through Volunteer HQ, what you would do is, make sure this table filter will show you more details. Sometimes the email is not there. So you just come over to the filter, put in the email. You can also see any other things, like if there's response notes, if they have their phone number listed, you can get that too. But if you wanted to send a message through Volunteer HQ, you would, if you click message responders and it's like, no, you must select a user. So if you wanted to do just one user, if you wanted all your volunteers, you click up here and you click message responders and you said, yes, I want to email them. Then you would just type your message, send the email, and that's that. That would be more like, if you needed to send a mass email very quickly, like, hey, this happened, I have to cancel the project, and you're not necessarily needing a response from people, you just send out a mass email. But I still think exporting your responses would be the best way to go. And you'd get the same spreadsheet. If you export responses, you select your need, export responses, you'll get the same spreadsheet if you just go into responses and export responses. Same difference. Let's see if there's anything else here. I don't think so. Any questions about viewing your volunteers and finding their emails and contacts? No? Okay, cool. Next thing we have tracking volunteer hours. So, the important thing about tracking hours to know is that both users themselves and agency managers, which would be you guys, can put in their volunteer hours. However, if a volunteer goes in and adds their own hours, it will come to us to be approved, which means then we have to check in with you to make sure that volunteer actually came. So a volunteer can't just say, I went to all of these places and I volunteered all of these hours, and it doesn't automatically give them those hours. It has to go through this verification process. But if you as the agency manager are the one putting in the hours yourself, saying, hey, this volunteer did in fact come, then it will automatically go on because, you would know that they were there. So if you have a volunteer need, or you have a need and you're looking, it already happened, you're going to say, okay, I want to show my expired needs. Tell me what already happened. And you want to go and add in hours for the volunteers. So I'm going to go in here. No one has responded to that one. Let's see if this one. No one responded to that one. Okay. So usually you would have like people who have already responded to your need. You would go in here and click on responses and it would show you. This one is the only one that I a volunteer responded to. So I'm going to go in. This is the same place where we just looked for how to contact people. Over here on the right, you'll notice that you can add hours. So what you would do if you want, like, Erin came on November 4th, 5 p.m. I'm going to add her hours. You click the little clock. Um, this is giving me a notification that, there were already hours logged. So let's say a user already said I worked those hours and United Way approved them, then it will tell you like, hey, there's already hours in here. Do you want to add more? Um, and so usually you would be like, oh no, I don't need more hours. But if, let's say, you know, they the volunteer need said it was 3 hours long, but they stayed for 5 hours, and you want to make sure that they have those 5 hours. You're gonna say, yes, I want to add more hours. Um, and then you have the option to customize here. You say they came for 2 hours extra. Um, then you would just click add, and now this volunteer in their own records has a total of 5 hours. They have all those hours. Um, and then if I went in again, it will show me 5 hours were logged for this person. Make sure you want to add more hours. No, 5 hours is what they worked. Cool. So that's how you would add hours. Um, for people who respond through Volunteer HQ. Of course, it's not a perfect world. So let's say you have volunteers who show up, did not respond to your volunteer HQ need. Maybe you found them organically. Um, Someone came up to you and said, hey, I need hours to get my SNAP benefits. Can I come work for you today? And you're like, yes, please. They didn't go through volunteer HQ. Um, of course, that happens all the time, and that's great. It's good to have that sort of organic connection happening. If they want to track hours, they must have a user account and they must have responded to the need. So they would have to be in um, they would have to be in this list of responses for you to be able to add hours to them. So what would you do if a volunteer did not respond is not on Volunteer HQ, doesn't know anything about Volunteer HQ? What you would do, the best thing to do is to direct them to sign up to Volunteer HQ. So that would just be, going to uwroom.org or uwroomvolunteers.org and having them, oh, well, this isn't going to do it because I'm already logged in. But if I open a new tab and I bring myself to the volunteer site, having them sign up, and then all they need to sign up is their first name, their last name, and an email. There's a bunch of other things they can add in, but they do not have to. They just need first name, last name, email, and then to set a password. So if you have a volunteer and they need to track their hours, or even if they don't need to track their hours, but hours are good for organizations to keep track of, if it's something that a grant asks you about and you want volunteer hours, this site helps you pull that data together. So you would probably still want your volunteers to be on Volunteer HQ. So you would have them make an account. And if you don't remember to do that, either way, the next step would be to email us. Email me, and we can do the volunteer hours for you because we'd have to add a response manually and then track the hours. So basically, if someone's not in Volunteer HQ, please just let us know. Please have them, if there's like before they leave, have them sign up to Volunteer HQ. And then either way, please email us and then tell me your volunteer's name and their email. That way we can make sure they're in the system. If they're not, I would go invite them to make an account. Tell me which of your agency's needs they responded to. So like that's why it's important to have, you identify a need. We need people to help us sort the closet that has been vacant for years. You need to put them on Volunteer HQ so we have something to like attach that volunteer to. And if you haven't yet, that's also fine. Just like tell me what they volunteered for, and then I can go in and create that need. But the best thing to do is, you identify a need, just create a need, a Volunteer HQ. And then let me know the date and time and number of hours they volunteered. So if you send me all of this stuff, I can help put those hours onto Volunteer HQ. And then going forward, that volunteer, if they come back, they will have a place to track hours too. Yeah. Any questions on tracking hours? No. Okay, cool. So come to the end. Um, so some key takeaways. Make sure you have a positive volunteering environment. Make sure you post whatever your organization's needs are onto Volunteer HQ. That way we can see what your needs are. I can direct people to your organization if people call United Way. And you can better interface with volunteers and they can better interface with you. So post your needs, create that positive environment so that people are like comfortable volunteering with you and want to come back. Make sure you have a sign-in sheet. So get their name and email are the most essential. And again, here is that sign-in sheet that we have. It's fillable. You can use your computer or you can print out a copy. And then at the bottom here, you'll see like, please notify us. Uh, notify your volunteer coordinator if you need your volunteer hours tracked. So this is kind of just like, if you give your email, we're going to create a volunteer HQ account and then we'll track your hours for you. That sort of thing. So have a sign-in sheet for your volunteers. However casual, however frequent your volunteers are, just have your volunteers sign in. It's a very good thing to track. Again, make sure the Galaxy Digital emails is not blocked because that's how you will receive notifications that someone has responded to your need on Volunteer HQ. Keep your contact information updated so that people know who to go to. Before your volunteer leaves their site, ensure they're on Volunteer HQ so that they can track their hours. And then contact me if not. And if you have issues, at any stage of this process, if you have issues, just please reach out. Please reach out. Track volunteer hours. It's beneficial for them and for you. And again, here's my contact information. At the end of the day, Volunteer HQ is good for both volunteers and organizations to store data, to interact. If you have your own volunteer tracking system, that's great. But it may not allow for volunteers to see what hours they've tracked. Volunteer HQ can like create a report for a volunteer to say, here's all the things that you've done. So that's why we encourage Volunteer HQ. So at the end of the day, we want people to receive their benefits. We want people to eat. Unfortunately, this might be how we make sure people do that. So this is why it's important. It's important to have volunteers feel engaged and for your organizations to be able to build your capacity. So again, if you have any issues or questions, contact me or just the general United Way number. And yeah, I think that's everything I have. Does anyone have questions? Okay, cool.
Thank you very much, Aaron. We really appreciate you putting this together and being willing to talk with any partners who have questions. We will be sending out this recording as well as other materials Aaron has put together on Volunteer HQ. Again, we're just very focused on those individuals right now who might struggle to receive their SNAP benefits, and we want to make sure that this platform exists for them and for partners to help, get those volunteer connections made. But without further ado, Aaron, again, thank you so much. All right. Have a great day, everybody.